Bhusunda continued, "Best of all states, O sage, is indeed the vision of the one infinite consciousness. Even the contemplation of the self, which is infinite consciousness, banishes sorrow, terminates the long dream vision of the world appearance, purifies the mind and the heart, and dispels worries and misfortune. That contemplation of the self is devoid of mentation." In other words, this contemplation of the self isn't thinking about the self. It's realizing the self. This might seem quite peculiar, but we usually listen to music without mentation. States devoid of mentation are not unusual. And in the same way that we listen to music, we can listen to silence, we can listen to space, we can listen to what's going on. And I don't just mean sounds, I mean that state of attentiveness, that state of just being open to whatever's happening, being open to the stream of experiencing without mentation. If you're open to the stream of experiencing, truly open to it, then you've realized the infinite consciousness, the self. It is easy for the like of you. It is rather difficult for the like of me. One wonders why it should be difficult for such an extraordinary being like Bhusunda. And again, I feel that this reinforces my theory that Bhusunda is still identified with very subtle elements of the ego principle. They are so subtle that they seem spiritual. So being unable to contemplate the self, or finding it too difficult, we're going to get the practice of pranayama sold to us. But this contemplation of the self has comrades. It doesn't really, as it were, that closely resembles such contemplation. Among them is the contemplation of the life force, or prana, which enables one to overcome sorrow and to promote auspiciousness. I have adopted this contemplation. It is that contemplation of prana that has bestowed longevity and also self-knowledge on me. I shall now describe it to you. So here we've got this excuse for practicing pranayama. There's absolutely nothing wrong with practicing pranayama or anything else. But we need to be quite clear, it's not the same as self-enquiry. And I'd be very careful of these comrades of self-enquiry, because they might not be what they seem. In this chapter we get quite a detailed description of pranayama, and it's described in very similar terms to self-enquiry. I'm not actually going to read it out because I don't see any point in it. If you're interested in pranayama, then you can read the text yourself. But otherwise I think it's a bit of a red herring. It supplies us with lots of notions that we don't need to be bothered about. We've got prana, which is in the upper part of the body, the vital air in the upper part of the body, or the inhalation, and apana, which is the prana in the lower part of the body, or the exhalation. And you've got kumbhakas, which is the space between the inhalations and the exhalations. You've got internal kumbhaka, which is experiencing that space between the in-breath and the out-breath internally, and you've got external kumbhaka, which is before you actually breathe in the upper part of the body. So we've got all these notions, and they're all given various significance, and there's lots more notions as well. So what I'm going to do though is just read the concluding paragraph of this chapter, because I think this concluding paragraph is actually going beyond pranayama and talking about self-enquiry again. So if you're having trouble doing self-enquiry, then by all means do something else. I don't think it needs to be pranayama. It can be any kind of meditation, or just thinking or contemplating about things in the normal sense of the word. Just reading or whatever. So the supreme state here is regarded as when there's effortless suspension of breath. When there is effortless suspension of breath, it is the supreme state. This is the self. It is pure infinite consciousness. He who reaches this does not grieve. So we can see what that should be when there's no in-breath and when there's no out-breath, when you're between the in-breath and the out-breath. It's analogous with the supreme state. I contemplate that infinite consciousness which is the indwelling presence in the prana, but which is neither with prana nor other than prana. I contemplate that infinite consciousness which is the indwelling presence in the apana, but which is neither with apana nor other than apana. That which is after the prana and the apana have ceased to be, and which is in the middle between prana and apana, I contemplate that infinite consciousness. I contemplate that consciousness which is the prana of prana, which is the life of life, which alone is responsible for the preservation of the body, which is the mind of the mind, the intelligence in the intellect, the reality in the ego sense. I salute that consciousness in which all things abide, from which they emerge, which is all and everywhere, and which is all and eternal, which is the purifier of all, and whose vision is most meritorious. I salute that consciousness in which prana ceases to move, but apana does not arise, and which dwells in the space in front, or at the root of, the nose. I salute the consciousness which is the source for both prana and apana, which is the energy in both prana and apana, and which enables the senses to function. I salute that consciousness which is in fact the essence of the internal and the external kumbhakas, which is the only goal of the contemplation of prana, which enables the prana to function, and which is the cause of all causes. I take refuge in that supreme being. So it seems to me that after practicing pranayama, Bhusunda the crow is practicing self-enquiry, self-realization.